The galaxy was not a kind place. Not anymore. For hundreds of years, the Veiltheri Empire had ruled most of the known stars with a hard fist and cold eyes. They built warships the size of moons. They wrote laws that covered every living thing in the galaxy. And at the top of their most dangerous list, above all criminals and rebels and rogue planets, sat one single word: dragons. The Empire called them Category 0. That meant shoot on sight. No questions. No trial. Just the cold silence of space after the shot. Nobody knew exactly why the Empire hated dragons so much. Some people said it was fear. Others said it was something older and darker than that. But the reason did not matter much when you were the one being hunted. Nathan Cole had been flying the salvage ship Iron Compass for 11 years. He was a quiet man, broad-shouldered, with graying hair at his temples and eyes that always looked like they were doing math. His crew trusted him. That was enough. His crew was small but good. Laura Finn was the ship's xenobiologist, always the first one to kneel down beside something strange and hurt. Aaron Webb flew the ship and fixed the engine and complained about both constantly. Diana Marsh kept everyone alive as the ship's medic. Owen Pratt watched the doors and the sensors and never stopped watching. They were running a routine salvage job near a dead moon when Laura's scanner beeped. Inside the wreck of an old alien freighter, buried under twisted metal and frozen dust, was a sealed cargo pod. The life signal coming from it was faint. Almost nothing. Like a candle in a storm. They cracked it open. Inside, curled in a cracked stasis shell that had been slowly failing for decades, was a dragon. She was tiny, no bigger than a large cat, with silver-blue scales and wings folded tight against her small body. Her eyes opened slowly. They were amber, warm, and completely exhausted. She looked at Laura. She did not attack. She did not run. She just looked. Laura said her name before she even thought about it. Luma. Aaron pulled up the Imperial Law on his screen and read it out loud in a flat voice. Possessing a living dragon was a capital offense. If any patrol ship scanned them, the whole crew would be executed. Nathan looked at the tiny creature in the pod. Then he looked at Laura. Then he said quietly, "We are not throwing her back." Then his scanner lit up. An Imperial patrol beacon had just entered the sector. They had less than 2 hours. Running was not an option. Nathan knew that the moment the beacon appeared on his screen. A ship that runs gets chased. A ship that runs gets remembered. They had to stay calm, stay on course, and do something much harder than running. They had to hide a dragon in plain sight. The crew moved fast but quiet. Laura spread her scanner results on the table in the medical bay and started talking fast. Luma's biology was unusual, but some of her base markers were close enough to a common registered creature called a Velk, a small lizard-like animal that traders kept as pets. Close enough to fool a passive Imperial scan, maybe. Diana started working on a chemical compound right away. It was part lotion, part metabolic suppressant, and it smelled like burnt copper. The idea was to coat Luma's scales and slow down the biological signals that Imperial scanners would flag. Owen stood in the doorway with his arms crossed and walked them through exactly how Imperial bioscanners worked. He had spent years in colonial intelligence. He knew where the gaps were. If they masked 3 specific protein signals in Luma's breath and skin, she would read as a harmless pet on any sweep that did not get too close. Aaron, for his part, tore apart a storage cabinet and built a low-frequency bio-dampener out of spare parts. He set it up around a small hammock that Laura hung in her own quarters for Luma to sleep in. Luma watched all of this with calm amber eyes. When Diana carefully applied the compound to her scales, she sat very still and allowed it. When Aaron tested the dampener too close to her head and it buzzed, she blinked at him slowly like he was the most foolish thing she had ever seen. She also stole half of Aaron's nutrition bar while he was not looking and hid it under Laura's pillow. Aaron found out. He did not get it back. When Diana tried to take a small blood sample, Luma exhaled a tiny breath of cold air that frosted Diana's fingers. Not enough to hurt. Just enough to say no. Diana laughed anyway. The Imperial patrol vessel arrived on schedule. It was called the Veil Sundering, and it was bigger than the Iron Compass by a lot. 2 Veiltheri soldiers came aboard for a routine check. They were tall and gray-skinned with flat expressions and scanner rods that they moved through every corridor without hurrying. The rod passed over the door to Laura's quarters. It beeped once. The readout said, Velk, registered exotic fauna, non-threat. The soldiers left. The patrol ship pulled away. The whole crew stood in the corridor and breathed for what felt like the first time in an hour. Then Nathan's encrypted channel chimed with a message from an unknown source. It said only 7 words, "We know what you carry. Do not panic." The message led them somewhere they had never heard of. Nathan spent 2 careful hours tracing the signal back through relay points until it resolved into a real voice. Her name was Cass Dillon. She was a former Imperial cartographer who had walked away from her post after watching an entire dragon population wiped out on a colony world. Her voice was flat and precise, the kind of voice that had stopped being surprised by anything a long time ago. She told them about the Ember Road. It was not an organization with a name on a door or a flag on a ship. It was a loose and quiet network of dozens of species, human and alien alike, who had been moving surviving dragons to safe locations for over 100 years. Cass was one of their contacts. Then she told them what Luma was. The silver-blue markings on Luma's wings were not just color. They were identification. Luma was a silverline, a subspecies the Empire believed it had fully and completely destroyed. As far as the Ember Road knew, she was the last one alive. That night Laura sat in her quarters with the lights low and just watched Luma sleep. The little dragon stretched once, curled tighter, then opened one eye to check that Laura was still there. Then she closed it again. Owen found old records on silverline dragons and brought them to the crew the next morning. What he read made everyone go quiet. Silverlines were not just rare. Ancient civilizations, long gone now, had built entire exploration cultures around them. A silverline could detect navigational patterns in space that no machine had ever been able to map. They could find hidden routes, sealed paths, lost places. The Empire had not hunted them because they were dangerous. The Empire had hunted them because they could find things the Empire wanted kept hidden. The crew debated through dinner. Aaron said the smart move was to hand Luma to the Ember Road, people who actually knew how to keep her safe. Nathan was quiet. Diana said nothing but kept looking at Laura. Owen said it was Laura's call. Laura did not answer that night. In the morning, Luma climbed up onto the navigation console while Aaron was eating breakfast. She pressed her small nose to the star map display and made a low humming sound, barely audible, more felt than heard. The map flickered. A route appeared that was not in any colonial or imperial database. Then Luma turned around and looked directly at Nathan and waited. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Aaron slowly set down his food. Nathan set a new course. Cass Dillon sent one more message before they moved out of range. It said, "Wherever she is leading you, follow." The last silverline only shows the way once. Someone had talked. Or a scanner somewhere had been reviewed more carefully than it should have been. Either way, the Veil Sundering was back on their trail, and this time it had brought friends. 2 more Imperial warships were closing in from different angles. They had maybe 6 hours before intercept. The route Luma had shown them needed 18. Nathan gathered the crew at the main table and laid out the numbers without dressing them up. He did not panic, and he did not pretend things were fine. He just told them what they were facing and asked for real ideas. Owen spread the Imperial intercept vectors across the screen. There was an old debris corridor nearby, left over from a battle that nobody alive remembered. It ran roughly parallel to their route. Dense, hard to scan through. It would add 3 hours to their travel time but scatter their signals so badly that tracking them would be nearly impossible. Aaron pointed out that if they pushed the drive hard they could make up most of those 3 hours. He also pointed out, in the same breath, that there was a real chance the engine coupling would blow completely. Nathan asked him the odds. Aaron thought for a moment. 60-40 in our favor, he said. Nathan told him to push it. As they moved deeper into the debris corridor, Luma changed. She stopped sleeping in her hammock. She started sitting near the front viewport for long stretches, very still, watching the stars. Diana monitored her and noticed something remarkable. Luma was humming at very low frequencies, below what human ears could easily catch, and the hum was doing something to the ship's electromagnetic output. It was subtle and precise. She was helping hide them in ways their own equipment simply could not do. She had never been a pet. Not for a single moment. Late in the run, when the tension had settled into everyone's shoulders like weight, Laura sat down beside Luma near the viewport and talked quietly. She told her about Earth. About rain falling on forests and oceans stretching out past the horizon and animals that had learned to trust people over thousands of years. She was not sure how much Luma understood. Luma leaned forward and rested her small head very gently against Laura's hand. Diana was standing in the doorway. She said quietly, "She understands enough." One Imperial warship got close enough to attempt a hard scan, the kind that could punch through biodampeners. The reading came back inconclusive. The commander, a meticulous officer named Vale Chorus, did not like inconclusive. He ordered an intercept. Owen moved. He broadcast on the Colonial Fleet emergency frequency, which Imperial law required the Veiltheri to acknowledge, and filed a formal distress declaration citing engine failure. The engine was genuinely struggling. It was not entirely a lie. Colonial law gave a distressed ship safe passage until a colonial response vessel arrived. The Empire could not legally board them. Vale Chorus held position, furious and patient. They cleared the debris corridor. Ahead of them, exactly where Luma had pointed, was the unknown destination. Luma stood up straight for the first time since they had found her and spread her wings fully. Silver-blue light traced every vein. The other dragons were close now. She could feel it. The iron compass came out of the debris corridor into a part of space that should not have existed. It was a hidden system, 3 planets in a slow orbit around a quiet star, tucked behind a navigational anomaly so perfect and so permanent that Imperial sensors read the entire region as empty dead space. The anomaly was not natural. Someone had built it, a very long time ago, to keep something safe. A dozen ships were waiting in the open space beyond the first planet. Different makes, different species, all old and quiet. Cass Dillon's ship was among them. No weapons raised. No hails demanding identification. Just waiting. The Ember Road called this place the Still Point. Nathan brought the iron compass in slowly. When the crew stepped out onto the docking platform and looked around, they saw them. 40 dragons, spread across the landing areas and the open sky above the nearest settlement. Some were enormous, older than any record the crew could have accessed. Some were small. None of them were Silverlines. When Luma was carried out in Laura's arms, every dragon on the platform went still. The communication channels between all the ships went quiet at the same moment. It was the kind of quiet that only happens when something that has been lost for a very long time finally comes home. The Ember Road's inner council met with the crew in a low building near the landing area. There were 8 of them, from 8 different species. They asked careful questions about Luma and the route she had shown them and how she had behaved. They recorded everything. Then they explained what Luma truly was. The Still Point had been built by a civilization that predated the Veiltheri Empire by thousands of years. A civilization that had not ruled over dragons but lived alongside them as equals. The Empire had not just hunted dragons out of fear or hatred. They had hunted them because a Silverline could find the hidden places, the sealed routes, the buried evidence of everything the Empire had destroyed on its way to power. Luma was not only the last of her kind. She was, biologically, a living piece of history that the Empire could not afford to let exist. One of the Elder Council members looked at Nathan and asked, with genuine curiosity in his translated voice, why the humans had not simply handed her over to the patrol. They had asked this question of many beings over the years. Most gave complicated answers about strategy or belief. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he said that when they opened that pod, she was small and scared and she did not hurt anyone. That was the whole reason. The council was silent. The elder member said, after a long pause, that this was the answer they had come to expect from humans, and that, in their long experience, it was the most dangerous answer in the galaxy to those who ruled through fear. The council made it clear that Luma was free. She did not have to stay. She could go back to the Iron Compass if she wanted. Nobody would stop her. Laura crouched down in front of her on the landing platform and looked her in the eyes for a long time. Then she told her, softly, that this was where she belonged. That there were others here. That she was not being left, she was being set free. She told her she was not holding on. Luma stared at her with those amber eyes for a long moment. Then she made a sound. It was clear and bell-like, and it hung in the air long after she stopped, like a note played on something ancient and resonant. Then she turned and walked slowly and with her head high toward the others waiting in the open air. She stopped once. She looked back at Laura. Then she went. The Empire was still out there. Vale Chorus had filed a formal complaint about the distress signal, and it would need to be answered. The crew of the Iron Compass had no medals and no recognition waiting for them, only questions from their own fleet when they returned. Aaron started the engine sequence without being asked. Diana wrote her notes on Luma in careful detail, the most complete xenobiological record any human had ever assembled. Owen ran contingency routes in case the Empire pushed harder. Laura stood at the viewport as the still point grew smaller behind them. She did not look sad. She looked like someone who had done the right thing and knew it, which is the closest this kind of story ever gets to triumph. Somewhere behind them, in a corner of the galaxy the Empire could not find, a small silver-blue dragon spread her wings in open air for the very first time. The ancient system held its breath. The other dragons watched. And she flew.